Welcome to the Worldwise Wealth Podcast. I'm your host, Nicole, and this podcast is your guide to building a truly borderless life. From entrepreneurship, investment migration, tax optimization, and everything in between, this show highlights the nuances of a global citizen lifestyle. Let's dive in. Global citizens often chase diversification, but what if you have diversified too much as a global citizen or a digital nomad? I'm going to be talking about my own experience from the last decade of living abroad as a global citizen and when I started to diversify too much and some of the problems that I saw within myself and that we see working with clients of over diversification and how you can remedy that. So, first and foremost, let's start with my own experience. So, I have had at some point in the past over 25 different bank accounts in 9 plus different jurisdictions around the globe. Now, when you first become a global citizen and you're looking to diversify and have multiple countries in your portfolio, whether it be for residency, citizenship, company formation, banking, or just general areas where you like to spend time on the ground, diversification is definitely something that you want to ensure you have. However, as you become a global citizen for years, potentially even moving into decades, the over diversification and the over accumulation of these different options can become extremely overwhelming. So, in my case, and what we see with many clients as well, is that you start diversifying, but it doesn't have an end point. And this is due to not starting with the end in mind, which when a client comes to us now, we always start with what is the end goal, the lifestyle, the business, the tax optimization, the diversification in general that they are looking to build, and then work back from there, which mitigates this problem of having an excess in any one area. Now, when we're talking about bank accounts specifically, and of course, in each area, there are various different issues with over diversifying. But when it comes to bank accounts, I personally was losing track of how much money were in these accounts, the fees that I was being charged for inactivity fees or bank or credit card fees with these companies. And sometimes there were even hidden fees that I was not aware of that the account was being charged. A lot of the time, I wasn't even aware that I still had that account or that that account was still open. And so the fees kept coming out of it monthly. And what is worse is when you don't have any more funds in the account, it gets eaten up by various different fees. And then you need to add more simply to keep that account open. So the key lesson there for me and for our clients now is that more is not better. And this was multiple years ago. This happened. There are so many, especially fintech banks now on the market. But of course, you want a good diversification of some solid fintech banks as backup options, but you also want traditional banks in various different jurisdictions, depending on your own plan and goal and what you have structured again with the end in mind. But especially when it comes to fintech banking these days, it can be very easy in certain jurisdictions to go overboard and have many more accounts than is needed. What we've also seen is that recently a lot of fintech banks that were free to a degree have begun charging monthly fees or increased fees. So you really want to be aware of this and be on top of the bank that you use instead of simply having many different bank accounts and being unaware of any changes or hidden fees that are starting to be charged. So when it comes to banking, this is one of the many issues with the cost of too much diversification. But what about when it comes to residency permits, for example? So we also see this with some of our clients when they start on the tax optimization residency journey, potentially leading their way to citizenship in time through naturalization. They want to hold many different residencies in order to have diversification. And this is why we start with the end in mind, because you don't need every residency out there that is easy or somewhat less restrictive to obtain. You just need the residencies that work for you, your goals, your lifestyle, and your tax optimization plan. So some residency permits, depending on the jurisdiction, and this changes for almost every jurisdiction, but some of them will require that you have 183 days plus in that jurisdiction in order to work your way towards citizenship or to keep your TR, PR residency active. Some may also require you to have 1 month to potentially 3 or 4 months in that country, especially if you're working your way toward naturalization. Some may require you to have 1 day, 1 week, 1 month. So the timeframes for residency vary greatly. And if you are holding 3, 4, 5 different residency permits, then you're having to travel to these jurisdictions every year, every 3 years, every 5 years to multiple jurisdictions, not because you live there or you want to spend time there, but simply because you need to keep that residency active. So this is fine if you have 1 or 2 residencies. But if you are building many residencies and you, of course, spent the time, the effort, the money, the energy to go through getting that residency, you want to make sure that you keep it active and that it does not expire. So, this is another problem that we see with an over diversification. Now, another area of this is also company formation. So, there are many different reasons why you may want to open a company, of course, for tax optimization, to expand your business, potentially to work your way toward a residency or a citizenship. But when you start having too many companies, this very evidently becomes an issue. With most jurisdictions, there are going to be either monthly accounting fees, monthly filing that needs to be done. Perhaps even if you have no movement within the company, you may be needing to pay yourself Social Security as an employee of that company monthly or annually. There's also local compliance, and you may need a registered agent or you may need renewal fees. You may need government filing fees, even if it is not a taxed company formation in that jurisdiction. They may want to know where's your residency. They may want to know information about you, the transactions that year in the company. So there is still going to be government or accounting filings. And so when you have too many companies in different jurisdictions, perhaps serving purposes that were not simply for tax optimization through your company, then this again becomes a piece of over diversification. So the main ways that we see over diversification are through banking, obtaining multiple residencies, and company formation. But there are various other ways that you can also obtain over diversification and over optimization as a global citizen. So, like I said, how do you remedy this? You start with the end in mind. We create a plan for you that is based on your tax and your lifestyle, are typically the two that I see: tax optimization and lifestyle, what that looks like for you, or what you project that to look like for you in the medium to long term. We're building a long term plan here. And then we are working back from that so that you know the goals that you're working toward instead of just meandering aimlessly around hoping to gain as many bank accounts, residencies, citizenships, whatever it may be, and have no end goal in mind. So, what do some of these options look like? Now, we work with various different banking partners within tax optimized jurisdictions where they are friendly, very friendly toward crypto, on ramping, off ramping with crypto to fiat, vice versa, and that are in these tax friendly jurisdictions where you are able to have a solid bank account, solid on and off ramps for crypto to fiat, vice versa. And that works holistically with your tax optimization plan and also where you have residencies. Of course, this varies depending on what your specific setup looks like, but there is definitely crossover for many of our clients between these two. So that is banking, where you want to make sure you don't have a million banks, but you have ones that are important to you and the core of what you do. So next up is residencies. There are many interesting residency options that are still on the table throughout the globe. There are some in Europe that are still very interesting to clients. There are many here in Latin America where I've been living for the last 3 years, and we help a lot of our clients with relocation, or not relocation yet, but simply getting that Plan B residency in Latin America, or maybe Plan C and D, just depending on your specific strategy. And then, of course, for company formation, having 1 or 2 strategic companies set up in tax optimized jurisdictions, again, depending on your plan, your residency, your banking options, where clients are located, payment processors, all of this comes into play. But you want to make sure that you have strategic companies that are serving you or your business and really have a purpose. So, when you are building out a global citizen strategy, you need to know that backup plans are essential, but over diversification equals distraction and stress in your plan. You want to ensure that you evaluate your plan, whether it be annually, semi annually, ensure that you're on the right track and know the goal points of what you need to accomplish in order to get to that end destination. And again, this looks different for every individual, every client that we work with, but we come up with a custom strategy based on their needs. And just remember, the goal of living a global citizen lifestyle is freedom, not administrative burnout and headaches. You've just listened to the Worldwise Wealth podcast. Visit our links in the show notes below or at worldwisecapital.com to learn more about how we can assist in your borderless diversification journey. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you in the next episode.